Right guys, I hope you can hear me. And I hope you can see the top of my head. I'm really paranoid in case that happens, where you can't actually see the top of my head. But anyway, I have a story to tell you. And it's from Craig Smith. Now Craig is, he was on one of my previous podcasts, Terrifying Fishing Encounter. I don't number my podcasts, so I don't know which one it was. You just have to look. I cannot remember where it was. So it's just under Terrifying Fishing Encounter, you'll find it. So he sent me a story entitled Sasquatch in the Thick. Now I asked him did he want to come on or me to read it, and it's not that he didn't want to come on. He said no, go ahead and read it. I'm like, I don't usually do that, but because I'm not good at reading out loud, and you know, I'm not good at reading and talking out loud at the same time. I get jumbled up sometimes. But anyway, and I have to do it off my phone because my printer's broken. It's the same thing, right? The only thing that kind of sucks here is the sun's right above me and it's shining into my phone, so hopefully this works. Anyway, so bear with me. Being fortunate enough to having my parents live on a reservation in the North Thompson region of British Columbia, I have been able to encounter Sasquatch on numerous occasions, from the obscure to the obvious. Now, this guy's really good at writing. I love his style. My second ever encounter with a Sasquatch happened on a regular BC evening in the month of August. While out one early evening on one of the Shuswap Lake arms fishing for rainbow trout on a perfectly glass-topped lake, my dad and I heard, or even felt, the eeriest, most blood-curdling scream reverberate down the valley and across the lake. The scream was clearly not human. It was ferocious and high-pitched, causing the hair on the back of my neck and my arms to stand on end. The scream itself seemed to come from high up on one side of the mountain and last for a good 15 to 20 seconds before the echoing effect took over, which sent waves of a mixture of sadness and fear. That's very well described. I like how he described that. I can actually picture it. After looking at each other in silence for a good moment of time, we concluded it to either a woman being severely tortured or Sasquatch. Those were the only two options we figured that could have caused that sound. As the darkness began to settle in for the night, we decided that we had caught enough trout that night and would head in for a shoreline fire. As we were sitting around the fire cooking hot dogs and discussing the scream we heard earlier that night, I decided to go around to the back of the house and grab wood for the firewood shelter. Well, because Bigfoot is almost always on my mind when I'm out in nature, and the scream from earlier in the evening, I decided to try my first ever tree knock. I figured I was in the middle of the mountains in the British Columbia interior, and with that scream earlier, well, why not? So I grabbed a chunk of birch about 1.5 inches in diameter and about 3 to 4 inches in length, and went to knock on a birch tree as hard as possible. I swung as hard as I could. I think he means feet there. I swung as hard as I could, and when it hit the tree, the branch made a muffled attempt as it broke into 3 pieces. Too old. The wood was too old, causing a sad tree knock. Within a few seconds, I heard a return knock. Automatically dismissing it as the neighbour somewhere close by messing with me, I thought I'd show them not to mess with me and grabbed the aluminum bat from the fire shelter and smashed a tree as hard as I could, and immediately dropped the bat as the vibrations were too intense. Yeah, I don't know what you mean. It goes right up your hands. It's really uncomfortable. Instantly, there was a much louder, closer tree knock, now coming from the forest on the mountain across the road from my folks' place. Close enough that I grabbed about 6 pieces of wood in one grab and decided it would be an earlier night than planned, and quickly returned to the front of the house. So the next day, as I'm walking down the beach, I see a couple of locals and I asked if I could join them. Of course, Being BC and all, they accepted my request and I joined them. Sorry, I'm just having trouble, following the shadow here. I explained the tree knocking incident from the night before and asked if there were Sasquatch in the area. As the two ladies laughed oddly, I became red in the face. They were joined by two other locals who had just pulled up. The girl began saying that they weren't really supposed to share with the tourists. I pointed out that they see me all the time, and I usually go to BC like 3 times a year, as my folks live down the road from the beach. They agreed and began to share some very important information about the traditional and historical views the reservation shared. Okay, this is really starting to bug me. Okay, there we go. No, actually, I want to kind of look at the camera. I'm screwing this up. I just can't seem to get a good shadow. Okay, there we go. Just pointed away from the sun. They agreed and began to share some very important information about the traditional and historical views that the reservation shared. At one point, one of the guys who had just arrived quickly cut her off and aggressively said that if he wants to see about that subject, then he can just walk down the trail himself and see it. And if he gets hit by a rock or even killed. It is BC after all, lots of bears. So I looked the guy in the eye, dusted off the sand and thanked him for his advice. The next afternoon around 3ish, I walked up the very steep hill to the left of the house that led to where the trail entered the forest at the top of the hill and exited about 750 meters to a kilometer away from the bottom of the hill. At the head of the trail I sat on an enormous log about 48 inches in diameter, that's big, and about 10 to 12 feet in length. As I sat on it, the view was spectacular. The trees on 2 separate properties split perfectly, and one could see the lake and mountain across the lake perfectly. The fear had built up pretty good by this point, so I stopped for a quick meditation. Because, well, how many times does that happen in life? Unfortunately, the meditation lasted longer than planned, and it had started to get dark. I'm cutting some stuff out here that is tripping me up. As the trail wasn't very long, I decided to walk down it this time anyway, not wanting to lose face. The start of the journey was very downhill and off the path. Immediately, it became insanely thick. The birds were chirping and the squirrels active in the back. The eagles that lived behind my parents' place was flying around in circles. About halfway down the hill I noticed that it had grown very silent, so I stopped and listened and looked around for bears or cougars. I grew concerned when I noticed the stench of manure, powerful body odor and skunk. As I stood there, frozen, fearing a bear or worse, a cougar, a rock the size of a baseball, flew about 3 inches past my left ear. Whoa. I immediately thought that it was one of the guys from the day before having fun with me and screamed at the top of my lungs, "What are you doing? You could have killed me with a rock that size, you effing idiot." At that point I heard a branch snap, so I turned and headed down the trail. Walking down the trail, I definitely felt like I was being followed, so I picked up the pace. When I got to where the trail leveled off, I looked over into the clearing on the left and saw a group of ancient burial mounds. As I stood there praying and looking over at the mounds, I noticed standing there an incredibly tall and muscular creature just watching me. It was the Sasquatch from the tree knocking encounter from earlier. With about 200 feet between us, I didn't feel much fear, and I realized that I was more likely just to get told off by a Sasquatch, so I decided to turn and get out of the area. As I turned, I thought the word respect and walked away, hoping it wouldn't follow me. The next day I was very excited and hopeful to see any one of the locals when I went for my daily walk on the beach. As I walked around the corner, 4 of the people I had seen before were sitting on the beach, and I headed straight for them. I explained the events of the previous afternoon And the guy from the day before said that I had been spotted walking out of the bottom of the hill by people in the chief's house. He stretched out his hands and said, "I didn't think you had it in you, but you got my respect." I said in return that I would never give up their location. Well, there's a fisherman. Hope I read that okay. Is that okay? You know, like I said, I'm not great at reading stories out loud, and I actually usually don't do it in this style. But I thought I would try something different. I'm always trying new things. So, I just got really thirsty, yeah, but that's a cool encounter. 200 feet away, and he spots this thing. Now, if the thing had thrown a rock and missed him by about 3 inches, I would be afraid. I know it was 200 feet away and he didn't feel much fear, but I mean, if he threw a rock at him and it was that close, is he that good of a rock thrower that he intentionally missed him? Or did he miss him by accident? You know what I mean? Now that would kind of freak me out. 200 feet away? That's a good distance. But I'm glad he's spoken feet too. I hate when people speak in yards, because I can't do yards. It's I mean, if I sat and thought about it, I could work it out in my head, but I have to think about it with feet. I know exactly, not exactly, but I know what 100 feet looks like. You know what I mean? Mainly because the church we used to go to when I was a kid, it was 100 feet tall. So I always used that as my barometer for telling feet. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. Don't know what I have coming up. Oh yeah, I hired some artist. I think he was from Italy, and he made me some just fun little No Such Thing podcast stickers with a kind of a zombie, mummy, Bigfoot type of creature, and they'd make fun bumper stickers. I might get some made and put them up for sale. I'm by the time I pay off what I paid for the artist and what I pay for actually getting them done, it's not like I'm going to make any money really, but you know, it's just a fun project. I like doing stuff like that. So anyway guys, I'll talk to you all later, okay?